Hi everyone, I'm Tim. I'm head of e-commerce for a business called The Bottle Club. We're a multi-brand alcohol retailer. We've got, I think there's a couple of slides that's coming up. Should we just if you go to the next couple of slides? Yeah, so we've got like 9,000 plus products across 1,000 brands in 800 categories across 2,000 collections. So we have a load of data and a load of products that we have to try and promote, maximize, optimize, and we're going to talk a lot about how doing AI wrong and where the pitfalls are coming from, where people are kind of missing the mark on it. And how we've always done it, we've looked at how do we be the AI without being AI. So how do we set top level rules that apply for all collections. But yeah.
So I guess I forgot to mention the title of the presentation. Basically, beyond lazy personalization, so how brands can be very intentional with the AI merchandising tools that they use, making sure that the platforms work for them, especially when catalogs, experiences can get a bit more complicated as well. So like you mentioned, you've got everything from cocktail kits to fine wines, fine spirits as well. What's unique about the customer journey for the Bottle Club?
So we're a business that sells one bottle of £20,000 Macallan whiskey, and we're also someone that sells 20,000 units of £1 miniatures. So we really do cover every kind of customer when it comes to alcohol, but there's so much nuance and detail when it comes to what those products are, the structure, the data, and we're a multi-brand retailer. We're product agnostic in terms of what we're selling, but we sell everything. We need to be the experts in what we're selling, but we also have always wanted to be, as Bottle Club, is the approachable side of alcohol. How do we make it more easy to digest, easy to navigate, easy to find? So how do we populate that data to how do we hold everything has been our biggest goal over the last 6 years.
And I guess before diving into the strategy side of things, what's the biggest shift in consumer behavior that you've seen maybe in the last year or so, or 2025?
For us, it was how do we get the customers. So it's not so much a consumer change, but it's been more about our change of how do we get in front of consumers. So we historically were a very kind of Google Ads focused business, or CPC, never really worked for us because when you're being a multi-brand retailer with this many products, what you really are is a price comparison. Google becomes a price comparison website. Everybody else is selling the same products as you. What's your USP versus them? Are you the cheapest? So our focus became less of how do we do more on Google, how do we spend more money in terms of how do we be more efficient with the customers that we've got. So we stopped doing cost per click, we stopped doing cost per impression marketing, just moved to CPA, and then we spent, as the guys mentioned earlier, really moved to a shift to retention, but a retention and profitability. So then doubled down on the customers that we did have. How do we turn them into advocates? How do we share what we're offering?
And then in terms of lazy personalization, which is of course a buzz sentence and the topic for today, in your words, what does that actually mean? I know it's been something that has been strong for you as well, and you've worked very hard to. So yeah, if you could explain it to us, it'd be amazing.
Yes, over the last 18 months to 2 years, everybody's talking about AI. That's why that's such a big topic today. But one of the biggest problems with AI is AI without context, and I think that's something that people really keep missing is context. It can't be useful. Using LLMs directly has loads of context. It's really, really powerful. But when it's only looking at your data set, it needs to have complete understanding of why you've structured it in the way that you have and how you're doing it. So what I define as lazy personalization or lazy AI is just turning on a tool because you can and not actually going to the depths of training it, teaching it, getting into the depths of the information it's looking up against. And I've got some kind of faux pas from different platforms that I've worked with that their generic AI output is really poor. And then it's actually how do we give it the data in the first place to make the most of it.
And I guess when relying purely on that AI, what sort of mismatches have you seen with the brand?
Should we click through?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share this slide first. So this is just whiskey for us. So we've got, again, 9,000 products across so many categories. But this is how we're viewing just in terms of product category. So inside of spirits, we've got whiskey, rum, vodka, gin. Inside of whiskey, we then go into Scotch, Irish, American, and then we go into Scottish whiskey being your Islands, your Lowlands, your Irish whiskies going into different types of single malts and blended Irish whiskies and things. When it comes to giving context, this is just one layer. We've also got all of the product attributes, which I haven't got on the screen, but in terms of kind of the lid of the bottle, for example. So if we're doing wine and we want to upsell corkscrews as a low value add to cart, how do we do that? Well, if we look at wine as a whole, not all bottles of wine need to receive a corkscrew. You know, if you've got a screw cap and you're upselling a corkscrew, it seems like you don't know your product data. And in a lot of cases, when you speak to real merchants, sometimes it's better to not do AI or not do any upsell than it is to give a bad upsell. And I think that's where the kind of laziness comes in. It's like, oh, I've put it on, so it'll give a result. I'm not going to check it. I'm just going to put it on. It'll give a good result. It knows what it's on about. And some of the things that we've seen, if we click through. So I'm going to use Jameson's as my input product into all of these AI tools. So the generic email service provider, because I'm not going to name and shame any of the people in the room, but the first output that I got from Jameson's straight in was a 1 litre bottle of Smirnoff, a 75 cl bottle of cheap sparkling wine, and Magnum tonic wine. Completely not the same customer base. And this was just based on nothing about the customer, just based on, well, I'm not really sure what it was based on, but we could not send that email out with those recommendations, and it would ruin our reputation and that kind of whole retention piece with the customer if we were sharing or pushing products that just really were not aligning with the business. And that's just on a product level, that's not even on an intent level. This was an upsell platform. Again, Jameson's kind of got a bit closer with getting whiskey with the first result, but you know, if you like Irish whiskey, you're definitely not like, you're not really kind of upselling Scotch. AU sparkling RTD cans, definitely not the kind of pairing that you would expect. And then for a £25 bottle of whiskey, a £196 bottle of limited edition tequila is not the upsell that you thought it was going to be. And then we go on to the third one, which is an AI chatbot that I had a conversation with. I said, my dad loves Jameson's, and I would love some alternative brands. What do you guys have? And it gave me back 3 bottles of Jameson's. And then I said, okay, no, what alternatives, like other brands? Currently, our product catalogue only includes Jameson's and its variants, so there's no alternative whiskey brands available on the site at the moment. This is the problem with generic turn-on AI, and I think there's a lot of businesses, that's where we're all getting annoyed about customer chatbots giving crappy results, because you're not checking the actual queries that you're asking. I think when we talk about Wizmo, we talk about really like low-value tickets and efficiency, there's loads of opportunity to kind of move into AI. But when it comes to product recommendations, especially in our business, our credibility relies on us understanding our products, and you can easily miss the mark of that by just handing out results.
Guys, because there's a lot of nuances, you know, around every single one of those products. Exactly. So talking about how you fix that and blending, you know, AI with strong merchandising rules, would love to see how you incorporated those, maybe one not replacing one another, but working together as a whole.
Yeah, so I think from the previous talk, and James mentioned it quite a lot, is about you have to have the data, and data is useless if you don't use it. But when we've got 2,000 collections, I don't think I've ever been in all 2,000 of our collections, but we've got them, we've built them. And the problem is you can't go in and maintain a set of rules to that many. So we've always gone with an approach of how do we do something blanket that's going to work for the entire business without having to know the detail of the places that it's going to be in. So like if you're pinning products, for example, there's so many businesses you'll go in and you'll go onto their first page and they pin 3 products and 2 of them gone out of stock, but they're still in the first position. And it's just really, it's not efficient, it's not effective. So we came at a point of going, okay, what rules can we put on a top level of a category, which were, we want to boost these products. So for example, algorithmically, we don't want to pin, we want to algorithmically bring these products further up into the collection. How do we do this? So we had to look at what the metrics were about that product that needed boosting. So how do we define that they actually were products that were in the wrong place and needed to be high? So we built a score based on inventory, margin, and weeks of sale, and that was calculated every day, pushed to the products, and then that blended score basically re-merchandised and moved the products further up the collection. So, and doing that just as one set of rules added a 30% increase in profitability just based on PLP conversions. So that was kind of how we're applying that data just to collections. And then obviously the second part of that, that's just on a normal intent, normal journey. How do we get more into basket when we've got that conversion? That's where we kind of get into our rebuy piece. So I wanted to show on the slide, but I didn't get a chance to actually make the slide that I wanted. But we have 4 pillars, what we call 4 pillars of upselling. The first one, very generic, what most people do. On a PDP page, we have more products from that brand and more products from that category. So then if you're on a Jameson's, you'll see other Jameson's products, but you'll also see other blended whiskey on the lowest, most specific category level. And then that's also done by, is it matching on size, is it matching on closure, etc. So then if you've got a 70cl bottle, here's other 70cl bottles that are the same. But then it gets more onto the really specific things. So then when that's added to cart, our pillar 2 is how do we add something of the same value into the cart? Because there's more of an intent before you're kind of getting to checkout. So that first bit is how do we get more another product in the basket of the same value? And that's based on, okay, looking at the size, looking at the price point, looking at if it's wine, here's some wines that we really want to promote over that kind of algorithmic thing, pinning those into the rule set, and then going down to, appropriately matched products based on matching brand, matching size, matching ABV, matching price points, etc. And then it goes down to, okay, if they didn't want to add a product of the same value, how do we get a little bit more into the basket? How do we increase that AOV slightly? So then it's, okay, what are the accent products? And obviously, most spirits are sold with other products in mind. So then if you're buying a bottle of JD, you're probably going to buy Coke. If you're going to buy a gin and you're a cocktail person, you might want to be making Negroni. So you want to be kind of serving Campari or Moscow Mule, selling some ginger beer. So lower value, things that are not necessarily another bottle of the same category, but something that's an accent. And that's where we've got, I think I was showing Jess earlier, we've got like 43 rules just in Rebuy on that one pillar alone, thinking of the categories, but trying to be quite broad in the way of doing it. So then if it's a really high level category, so say whiskey or bourbon, for a bourbon and American Tennessee whiskey, then it's going to be your Cokes. If it's going to be your tequilas, do you want it, what do you need to make a margarita, etc. So that's done in that one. And then we go down into our 4th pillar, which is those really cheap, quick, £5, like less than £10 upsells, just to add that kind of last bit into the basket, which is then your corkscrews, your glassware, your bottle stoppers, tags, gift boxes, etc. And that tiered approach means that we can be, we've got 4 opportunities, and potentially 5 if we were to do some post-purchase stuff. I'm really interested in some of the raises that Rebuy have got. But there's multiple opportunities during that journey to add value, and you're not missing out on that one opportunity at a high upsell. You're kind of staggering it down, and you've got more opportunities.
I'm curious, because that's a full funnel approach, and of course there's so many different layers to every point of that customer journey. What point of that customer journey have you seen be the most converting, or perhaps the one contributing to the most average order value increase?
Yeah. So for us, it's the pillar 3. I think it's quite a hard sell when it comes to something of equal value. If you go for an intent of saying I want to spend £60 on a bottle of whiskey, it's a hard push to say you're going to double that basket. But accent products and things that they didn't necessarily know about is where some of those kind of opportunities are. Another workplace that we've done it as well, which isn't done with Rebuy, but it's done with the same logic in mind, is that we built a recipe library. So there's 300 recipes on site, each one of them shoppable. So then if you're on a product, you'll see a recipe that product can be used inside of, because it's like a variable against the category. And then all of the other products underneath it are then able to be added to cart with one click. So then you came for a bottle of tequila because you're going to make margaritas, but actually there was a margarita mixing set, there was a glassware set, there's a cocktail tree to sell with it. Everything's done with that one click without having to kind of search your way around the site. And I think obviously what you're launching with the bundles solution, if I can kind of customize a way of doing that in how do I pick the things that I do and don't need within that basket, could be really powerful.
And how do meta fields and conditions such as, corkscrew versus, still water versus sparkling water, et cetera, play in that logic and those rule sets?
Yeah, sure. So as we keep saying, the data is the most important bit, and we didn't come at it with the upselling in mind, we did it in the category in mind. So when we relaunched our site with this many collections, it was based on, we want to be ranking for as many keywords organically, making sure that the products are in the correct position based on customers' actual intent. So how do we did a whole load of keyword research to work out what those search terms were, where the most driven traffic was, and made sure that we had captured enough information against each product. So we ended up building a PIM, mandatory populating all of the data that's in there. I think it's like 750 to 100 data points in there, depending on what kind of category it is. And then that's stored as both tags and meta fields. Tags because it's easier to do the name tag rules in Rebuy, and then meta fields. Meta fields is easy to do in Rebuy, but it's a little bit more specific in terms of trying to take the value and things like that, match values. But holding that data, Shopify is not a data center, but it can be. And your product, the more data you can enrich your products with, the more intuitive the filtering can be, the more easy it is to merchandise. And we'll go on to the gift, host, and sell thing in a minute. But the more data you have, even if you don't use it, the more you can query against it at a later date. So obviously we're buying from suppliers, and we say in a lot of our supplier meetings or JBP meetings is that I know probably all of the answers, but I don't know what the question is yet. So if you can ask me the question, we can go and find the information because everything's stored. And what's really cool about Shopify is because you're selling the product ID and nothing else, if you go and enrich a product today, you can go and see your first ever sale 10 years ago and see that data that's been enriched to it. So we can ask the question of, is it cork versus screw cap in wine? Mm-hmm. We can go and build a whole report based on every year and see the transition between how many wines do we sell that were cork and screw cap, and then what were the sales, and see if there's been, if that was a query that a wine manufacturer or a vineyard wanted to know, we've got the data and we can get really, really interesting data out if we knew what the question was. And I always use an example that a friend of mine is head of shopper marketing for Pladis, the McVitie's and businesses like that. And they recently launched white chocolate digested biscuits in the UK. And she said to me that they were launching specifically in the northeast of England, which I thought was bizarre. And apparently based on Nielsen and Kantar data, northeast of England over-index on white chocolate. Tim, do you agree? But what I find really interesting about that versus us in this room is actually that's only based on purchase data and not based on intent data. There's no click, there's no interaction, there's no view data that's laid into those decisions. So imagine what more we can be doing with the data that we've got if we know how to use it, as James mentioned.
Mm-hmm. And I guess balancing that use of AI in the platforms versus also having that human touch, where's that balance and how do you approach that balance as well too, so that shoppers can have that very personalized experience?
Yeah. So we had a hypothesis probably for about 2 or 3 years that 50% of all of our customers were gifting customers. We had no way of actually proving that other than going on the type of products that they were. So if they're in a gift box, they're in a gift set, they were a gift just as a generic rule set. And 50% of those sales, 50% of sales were those products. But we wanted to know this for sure. We wanted to really understand what that looked like. And I'm a big Klaviyo user, one of the Klaviyo champions, talk a lot about Klaviyo. We wanted to build proper smart segmentation based on that data, but we had to go and gather that data efficiently, not just based on product purchase. So we added in checkout with checkout blocks. Shopify bought checkout blocks recently. All Shopify Plus merchants can add customizations to their checkout. So we have a mandatory question in checkout, hasn't affected conversion rate, don't worry. One mandatory question, and it's who are you buying for in this order? Yourself, so, a gift, are you hosting, or is it trade or other? And based on that, it pushes the data using Shopify Flows into Klaviyo to build segments. But what that's unlocked for us, which is where it comes into the personalization piece, is that every single order, but now also every single product sold has the attribute against it. So we can actually go and see who are our gifting customers, who are our self-consuming customers. And that was great in terms of being able to personalize the content and build flows off the back of. But the thing that's been most interesting for us, we're still working on how we leverage it now, is Klaviyo has been focused on doing RFM analysis for a long time. RFM analysis, great tool, but it uses RFM analysis as the entire list, not the segment itself. And actually, when you go into the data, you'll start realizing that gifting customers buy a lot less frequently than you would assume. So they're buying, birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, maybe Valentine's Day. That's why they come to you, but they don't come to you for self-consumption. A lot of our customers are, buying Jack Daniels from the supermarket, and then they're buying the special editions from us. So the repeat purchase rate of those customers is completely different to that of a self-consuming customer. But based on RFM analysis, they would go into at risk. You'd be sending the wrong flows. You'd be telling them, what do we need to do? You'd be over discounting and doing too much and almost pushing the customers away because you don't understand their intent. So you can get down to stupidly levels of personalization, like bringing names in, doing all these different things. But actually a lot of it is just understanding customer intent. And I think it's true for any business in the room. Any e-commerce business probably has one question that if they asked at checkout and found out that one thing, they could unlock so much more revenue, so much more of a relationship with the customers. Like I always use the beauty example. If you've got a skincare, for example, if you've got a product that's perfect for acne but they've got psoriasis, and you actually ask that question as one mandatory question in the checkout, and they said, oh, I've got psoriasis, you can be proactive with your customer service and say, this actually isn't the right product for you. We'd love to give you a quick refund, or we'd swap it for this product that we think would be great for your psoriasis. This isn't the one. But people don't want to fill in a pop-up form. They don't want to fill in, there's a 20 to 30% completion rate on post-purchase forms. So that one mandatory question is going to unlock so much, but for you to build a better relationship with the customers. And I think personalization is the wrong word. It's how do I build a better relationship with my customers, not how do I personalize my content.
And those questions specifically have been made at checkout?
At checkout, yeah,
okay.
Because it's mandatory.
Yeah,
because it's mandatory, you have to get that piece, and you can then go and report on what is actually my best gifted product, what is my most self-consumed product. And then back to the 50% thing was the products that we thought were the gifting products turned out to be self-consuming products, because they were like special edition bottles, like the Jack Daniel's McLaren bottle. It wasn't a gift, you're buying it to keep. They were collector's editions, but they would be categorized as a gift box. It was coincidentally the same value, it was still 50%, but the products were different, which means this Christmas we're loving it because we know what product's been bought for the last year for gifts in each category. We can build good, like, actual data-led buying guides rather than just margin and high stock level buying guides. So we can be really specific in terms of what is the customer's intent, what products do we recommend, build that into our kind of rebuy flows. If somebody says it's a gift, and we were chatting yesterday about if we were to actually have a live impact on the upsells based on an input, then if they said this was a gift and that, you know, in checkout pop-up was showing gifted products, we could do a lot with that data and serve up, oh, it's a gift, why don't you get the gift box, why don't you add a gift card, why don't you add this, another product that would make it a better gift. But if it was self-consuming, then it would be, oh, well, we'll grab some Coke then. So there's a lot you can do with it with that level of data, and that's just our business. What does it, you know, look at every one of your businesses or the agencies, the brands that you're working with, what could they be asking to get more insight from their customers?
So I guess for brands in the room, whether they have, you know, 9 SKUs or 9,000 SKUs, would you say that having or understanding that customer intent is where they should start, or is there, like anything specific for brands that want to really cater to their shoppers?
I think the first thing is gather the data, and the best thing about the product data is you can enrich it now. Like it's not after the sale you haven't got any data. You're unlocking visibility and data on all of your historic sales by enriching them. So building a PIM doesn't have to be an expensive PIM or something like a Kenya community. It can be done really cheap, just to get the data in there in the first place. You can even do like a matrix if I upload if you really wanted to, and just hold some products against the meta fields and report against it. But gathering that data means that when you're building out all your upsell strategy, when you're building out your collections, you're cleaning everything up to be able to report on it afterwards. And then that comes into then you can look at, okay, now we know how things are selling. Now we know how things are structured. Let's be logical about the upsells that we put into place. And then secondary would be gather what you need to, what you don't know about the customer that would help you have a better relationship with them, which is that whole personalization piece.
No, incredible. That is so important. And I'm curious, like when measuring and judging success, which specific metrics would you say are the most important that you look at? Is it average order value? Is it conversion rate? Is it attach rate? Like curious if there's like one specific overarching. I mean, I know James, you like spoke about like not honing in on that one specific metric, but like blending in the data as well. But curious, like what's important for you?
I think looking at, and because we don't do the kind of remarketing paid ad CPC model anymore, it's very much about profitability. Ours is very much about profitability. So we probably should be a little bit more like focused on specific metrics, but our goal for the last year was to get to like gone from a loss-making business to a profitable business, which we've achieved, which is amazing. But for us, it's been how are we doing in retention? You know, what have we increased the repeat order rate of our customers? Are they staying engaged? And we've got a mobile app, you know, are we keeping subscribers on the app? Are we keeping subscribers on our email mailbox? Are we seeing repeat purchases? And then also then going down to the segment level and seeing, you know, are they gifting at those key periods, and trying to redefine basically remake our own RFM calculation to work based on each segment. But yeah, and obviously if Rebuy is working really well, it is looking at how much of an increase in basket was there as the conversion rate increased. And one thing we never touched on was the whole server side versus client side stuff. But everything that we do on site is now server side, so everything's rapid and built in our way, and that's just helped us, you know, get a better handle on what's going on site.
And curious, how are you and the team making sure to stay, up to date with all the advances in, Shopify? There's a bunch of updates happening all the time. Do you normally learn first, train the team? How do you guys all stay agile to make sure you're adapting to, all the new functionalities?
Yeah, I think we try and stay ahead of what's going on and keep up with the news, and then just make sure that we've done the work. So it's kind of like us find it and then pass it down to the team to go and kind of implement some of the stuff. So we did some research on, obviously, buying through ChatGPT on Shopify in UK isn't available right now, but actually if you go and do some searches for your business, are you getting a product feed? So when I did it the other day and I was asking just a basic ChatGPT query on whiskey, Bottle Club came up, but it came up as a text-based thing with no product information. It was just because we were known. But actually some of our competitors were showing up in a product grid, and so like Tesco was in there. And I asked ChatGPT, why are we not in there? It's, well, we can't find this information, we can't find that. So actually it turned out there's a load of schema data that LLMs are crawling that you might not realize isn't being populated. So to be preparing yourself to be in the LLM results, not only do you need to kind of have your Shopify optimized and to be able to be purchased through, because I'm also concerned that we don't use Shopify payments. So I don't know, I'm still waiting to build a proper test to see if when you transact through ChatGPT, because obviously it was the Shopify checkout element, if that works for other third-party payment gateways, or if it only works for Shopify payments. So I don't know the answer yet, but that's something we're kind of researching. But there is schema that needs to be populated for it to be readable. Like it's same with Google, but actually you might not realize there's additional schema for your business that needs to be crawlable, and your competitors might have that data and you don't. So you're going to drop on that query. It's not necessarily obvious. And actually just go and go through Google Docs, go through LLM information, and look for what are the key schema fields that business is, that category looks for. So if it's for us at CPG, it's like serves and weight, price, reviews. All of those things need to be structured in a certain way. If they're all populated, you're more likely to appear within the feed within LLM with ChatGPT result rather than just a text-based result based on SEO results. Because at the moment, LLMs are just serving, basically rehashing Google in a more, because I met Lily Ray, who's like one of the big SEO and LLM experts in the US. I met her at an A1 event, and we actually had a long conversation about, what does LLM look like versus Google at the moment? Like if we've got Search Console, is there going to be a Search Console for LLMs? How do we manage the data that's in there? There is tools like Profound, which is basically your SEMrush Ahrefs of LLMs, but it's still early days to work out what the metrics are. So when I spoke to her, she said a lot of the information that's being served through LLMs is coming from key sources, being Wikipedia, for example. ChatGPT, big Wikipedia user. If you don't have a Wikipedia page for your business, first thing to try and implement, because that's a trust signal for LLMs. But also how you rank, you still need to be ranking in Google. You still need to be top pages for that to be a result. That's kind of one of the checks that it does. So there's a lot of data pieces to gather to be able to be good at it.
Thank you so much, Tim. So insightful.